Hey guys, welcome back to Kevin's podcast show. I'm Kevin. This is my podcast. Let's start the show. Hey, let's jump right into it. Today we're going to be talking about the Mandela effect. Let me tell you what that's about. I'm going to read it here so that we get it straight. I don't want to mess up. The Mandela effect is a phenomenon where a group of people collectively misremember a fact or an event. The term was coined by the paranormal enthusiast Fiona Broome. She, along with other people, remember Nelson Mandela, who was the leader of South Africa and was imprisoned for years during the apartheid. They remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s rather than from illness in 2013, which is what I remember. I know that he got out of prison after like 29 years. Him and his wife Winnie, he was with the ANC, the African National Congress. But anyway, he was president of South Africa after he got out of prison. And then he fell ill, and I think he spent a couple of years as kind of lingered, and then he finally died. It was 2013, about 5 years ago. Okay. There are other events similar to this where a collective group of people remember events incorrectly. We've got 25 examples of the Mandela effect, and let's just go with them.
Has it ever happened to you that you had a clear memory of something that never happened, or it happened in a different way? This bizarre and still greatly unexplained phenomenon is called the Mandela effect, and it's been getting more and more attention recently. I'm Mike with List 25, and from Monopoly to Star Wars, here are 25 mind-boggling examples of the Mandela effect.
I'm going to put a link for List 25 in the comments if you want to subscribe to that channel. I like the channel pretty good. Sometimes it's real good, sometimes it's but it's cute.
25. Nelson Mandela's death. Nelson Mandela, a prominent South African anti-apartheid revolutionary and president from 1994 to 1999, died when he was 95 on December 5, 2013, at his home in Houghton. However, many people in different countries clearly remember Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. Some of them even claim they remember his funeral being broadcasted on TV.
Okay, now that's one that I don't remember. I'd love to hear about in the comments if you remember Nelson Mandela dying in the 1980s.
24. The Berenstain Bears. Many people have fond memories of the Berenstain Bears books. They read them as children, or family members read them aloud. It's a cherished childhood memory. However, the books are actually spelled Berenstain Bears, with an A in the last syllable, not an E as so many people remember it.
I don't know if that's a Mandela effect or not. I mean, I'm not familiar with the books. I've always heard Berenstain Bears. Again, comments.
23. Billy Graham's death. Billy Graham, a popular American Christian evangelist, is alive as of December 2016, yet many people, including Fiona Broome, remember Graham's funeral on TV. Some people even remember the funeral in details, with Bill Clinton speaking words in Graham's honor.
Okay, I'm going to check that out. Okay, he died earlier this year. I don't remember him dying like in 2016. I don't know.
22. Henry VIII portrait. This portrait of Henry VIII was painted by Hans Holbein the Younger circa 1540. As you can see in the picture, there is nothing in the king's right hand, but many people would swear the king was holding a turkey leg in his right hand, as a symbol of the king's comfortable lifestyle and affluence.
I think that's just been in the zeitgeist where people have seen pictures of a big fat king holding a turkey leg, and then they superimpose that image over the painting of Henry VIII. That's not really the Mandela effect. That's more like your brain just putting things together. That's why eyewitness accounts are sucky at best, because our brains try to fill the little holes in. When we've got a hole somewhere, we tend to try to put something in it in our brains, and a lot of times we mess that up.
21. Number of U.S. states. The United States of America is a federal republic consisting of 50 states, right? So why do many people recall the U.S. including 51 or even 52 states?
Because they're dumb?
20. Canonization of Mother Teresa. Renowned Roman Catholic nun and missionary, and one of the most popular and influential people of the past decades, Mother Teresa was canonized on September 4, 2016, 19 years after her death. Nevertheless, some people recall her being canonized in the 1990s when she was still alive. Some specifically reference Pope John Paul II as the pope who approved the canonization.
I don't remember that. I remember her being elevated to sainthood after her death, and there was some discussion about it. So, that's what I remember.
19. We Are the Champions lyrics.
We are the champions, my friend, and we'll keep on fighting to the end. We are the champions. No time for losers, because we are the champions of the world. That's how I remember it.
We all know this legendary Queen song, whose final lyric is, "No time for losers, 'cause we are the champions of the world." But in fact, there is no of the world.
Whoa, I just got Mandela affected.
The song just ends with, "'Cause we are the champions," and it's driving so many people crazy because they feel 100% sure that they've heard otherwise in the past.
Well, you just saw it. I'm watching this raw for the first time. Wow.
18. Explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger. The second orbiter of NASA's Space Shuttle program, the Space Shuttle Challenger, exploded on January 28, 1986, resulting in the death of all 7 crew members. However, it's clear that many people recall it exploding earlier. Most of them are convinced the accident actually happened in 1984.
No, not 1984. It's 1986. I know that because I was at ETSU, and I was walking across campus, and I came through the student center, and back then, because it was a long time ago, because I'm old, they had 3 TV viewing areas, 3 little lounges, and they each had, one of them had ABC, CBS, and NBC, and when I went through, the place was packed, all 3 of them. People were looking in the windows and that sort of thing, so I know this was in 1986. Anybody remember it differently, leave me a comment down below. He's about to talk about Sex and the City. Don't know anything about it.
17. Sex and the City. The iconic romantic comedy television series produced by HBO is called Sex and the City, but many people insist they remember it being Sex in the City at some point.
I think I just said Sex in the City. I don't know. Rewind it and watch it again. What did I say? Sex and the City or Sex in the City? I don't know.
Sex and the City.
Don't really care.
16. Jif peanut butter. The leading peanut butter in the US since 1981, Jif peanut butter is a very popular snack, but an alternate memory recalling it as Jiffy peanut butter is widespread.
I think we used to call it Jiffy peanut butter. I know we did. We used to call it Jiffy peanut butter. Now, whether that was the name of it or not, it's not the point. Again, that may be something that's just in the zeitgeist and not necessarily a Mandela effect, because, get there in a jiffy and Jif.
15. Curious George's Tale. Curious George, the main protagonist of a series of popular children's books by the same name, is a little chimp monkey without a tail. Yet, a lot of people claim to remember seeing him use his tail to swing from the trees. 14. Darth Vader's phrase. Spoiler alert. The iconic line in the film The Empire Strikes Back where Darth Vader tells Luke Skywalker, "No, I am your father, is very often misremembered as Luke, I am your father.
Now, I know that I've seen this on the Mandela Effect many times about, no, I am your father. You know, instead of Luke, I am your father. But I think we're just taking some of those words out because it flows a little better. He's probably not going to mention it. I would be surprised if he mentioned it, but it's kind of like in the old movies where in Casablanca, when Humphrey Bogart's character Rick says, "Play it again, Sam." And I know we've all heard that phrase, "Play it again, Sam." Was not uttered in there. Neither was "Beam me up, Scotty." He may mention that. That was never uttered in the original series of Star Trek. They never said "Beam me up, Scotty." I remember a t-shirt that said "Beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life here." So they're attributing these Mandela effects to sometimes just the brain maybe working something a little better. You know, these Jiffy peanut butter sounds better than Jif peanut butter. You know, if I say, "Hey, get a jar of Jif," that's awkward to me in the way I talk. So get a jar of Jif peanut butter. Get a jar of Jif. So now that sounds good. But if I say, "Hey, get a jar of Jiffy peanut butter."
13. C-3PO's leg. Actually, there's another Star Wars related Mandela effect. In Episode 4, A New Hope, many fans recall C-3PO being completely gold, so they were greatly surprised when they discovered that he had a silver leg the entire time. In fact, a lot of memorabilia don't even feature the silver leg.
Seems like maybe I heard that, but that could be easily overlooked too. I mean, you know, you see a robot, it's coming at you, but then again, I'm the kind of person that if something is not symmetrical, I notice things have a different color on one side than they do the other. So I always remembered him being completely golden.
12. Lindbergh baby. In one of the most famous and publicly watched cases of kidnapping that has ever happened in the US, Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr., a 20-month-old toddler, was found dead on May 12, 1932. Some people, however, remember the kid was actually never found. There are also several alternative memories of the spelling of the name, as some recall it as Lindbergh, Lindbergh, and Lindbergh.
You know, I thought he was never found. Okay, all those different ways he said Lindbergh just kind of sounded like Lindbergh to me.
11. Tank Man. Also known as the Unknown Protester, the Tank Man was an unidentified man who stood in front of a column of tanks on June 5, 1989, after the Chinese military had suppressed the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989 by force. The identity and the fate of the man officially remain unknown, but many people have a vivid memory of the man being run over and killed by the tanks.
I watched all that. I do not remember the man getting run over and killed. It would have been gruesome if the man had gotten run over and killed. And I believe everybody would remember that. So if somebody remembers that, that's got to be a Mandela effect for them, because that's not how that works to me.
10. Oscar Mayer. The famous brand of hot dogs and lunch meats is actually Oscar Mayer.
My bologna has a first name, it's Oscar. My bologna has a second name, it's Mayer. No, I've always thought it was A because of the kid sitting on the dock eating a bologna sandwich and fishing.
My bologna has a first name, it's Oscar. My bologna has a second name, it's Mayer.
Although so many people remember it as Meyer with an E instead of an A in the first syllable.
How's that?
9. Leonardo DiCaprio's Oscar. It was a long-awaited and historical moment when Leonardo DiCaprio finally won his Oscar in February 2016. However, some people clearly recall the ceremony where DiCaprio won the Oscar happening several years earlier.
I remember him winning it in 16, but I do not remember anything before that. In fact, I remember people talking about him being snubbed for it. So,
8. Patrick Swayze's recovery. A popular American actor and dancer, Patrick Swayze died of pancreatic cancer on September 14, 2009 at the age of 57. But some people remember him making a full recovery from the deadly disease.
I think that they get that confused about him making a full recovery because he was actually doing a TV show when he died. He had gotten, I guess, a little strength, and he looked very gaunt in the show, as I recall. I don't remember the name of the show. I'll look it up and put it right here. Here. It should be dinging sounds when I do this. But anyway, I think that people just thought, oh, well, he's doing a TV show, he must be okay. So.
7. Monopoly Man. Do you also remember the Monopoly Man wearing a monocle? If you look at him carefully, you'll find out he does not have anything like this, and he never had.
I don't remember the monocle. I don't think. Maybe I do. Maybe I do remember a monocle. But I could be getting him mixed up with Mr. Peanut.
6. Sri Lanka location. The Mandela effect also frequently occurs in geography, as many people remember islands, landmasses, and countries in alternate locations. One of the most common alternate memories is related to Sri Lanka. A lot of people remember this island being located south of India, not southeast as the map shows. 5. Pikachu's tail. Many Pokemon fans remember Pikachu, the most iconic character of the series, having a black tip at the end of his tail. Some of them would draw Pikachu all the time, and they would swear he had a black tip at the end of his tail. Well, not in this reality.
Not a fan. Don't know.
4. Snow White Queen's phrase.
Okay, he's talking about Snow White, and as I recall, she said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" I think.
Most people remember the evil queen in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs going up to her mirror and saying, "Mirror, mirror on the wall." But if you rewatch any version of the movie, you'll discover that this phrase has never been there. The real phrase is actually, "Magic mirror on the wall."
Really? I've always thought it was mirror, mirror. Mandela.
3. Martin Luther King Jr.'s death.
My memory serves that he was killed on the steps of a hotel in Memphis. I don't remember the name of the hotel, but it was in Memphis, Tennessee. And that's what I remember. So let's see what he says.
The official version describing the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. says he was shot and killed by sniper James Earl Ray on April 4th, 1968 at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. The gun was a Remington Game Master rifle, owned and fired by Ray. Nevertheless, many people remember MLK being killed with another weapon, mostly a handgun or a bomb.
No, I remember it was James Earl Ray, and then he recanted his story because he ended up in Brushy Mountain, as I recall. You don't want to go to Brushy Mountain.
2. Disney World. Some people remember entering the Magic Kingdom through the castle. Another alternate memory is that the castle was much closer to the end of Main Street than it really is. 1. Neil Armstrong's death. One of the world's most important astronauts, and the first person to walk on the moon, Neil Armstrong died on August 25, 2012 in Cincinnati, Ohio. But there is a common belief among his fans that he died 1 year later in 2013.
I don't know. Neil Armstrong, maybe he did die. I don't know. I don't have that kind of memory. So those are some examples of the Mandela effect. Now let's talk about that for just a second. I've studied a little bit. I'm not an expert. Don't believe anything I say. Read a book. Okay? But this is what I say about the Mandela effect. I know that everything that we have in the world, everything that we are, for example, this envelope, this is what it is because we all, over the eons of time as human beings, have come to accept that this is an envelope. Okay? When the world was a lot smaller, there was a lot fewer people, and I took this thing right here to them, they wouldn't have any concept of that because paper wasn't readily available. That wasn't a thing. So they would have a hard time wrapping their mind around this. They really would. And it's the same way with this. If I've got a can right here, okay? So here's a spray can. You did that in the 1200s, 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, you would be some kind of witch, okay? You would be a disinfected witch, but you'd be a witch. But over time, human beings have understood what things are, so I could take this to a child who is 2 or 3 years old and hand it to them, and they know exactly what this is. They may not know that it's a disinfectant. They may not know that, but they would know that this is some kind of spray. They would know that this is a button of some kind. They have no concept of what's inside of it, but they would have a concept of that if you push this button, something is going to happen. Okay? And that is because of our collective consciousness. And we have a collective consciousness, and we have decided that's what things are. And if you do a little bit of research whenever Columbus landed in the West Indies, the first Indians, the natives there, when they first saw the ships out on the water, they didn't know what, it was nothing to them. It didn't mean anything to them. It was just a thing on the water because they had never seen a ship before. They had no concept of it. They couldn't understand it. And finally, they began to understand, and then once it was conceptualized to them, then they could understand it. In other words, anything that's out of context, we don't understand. So I say this, that if we all agree that this is a can, a spray can, we could all agree, if we had the power to control our minds, that this was a bar of gold. How cool would that be? Because I wouldn't be doing these YouTube videos, I'll tell you that. But I'll tell you, we have the ability with our minds to do a lot of things. And observance of something changes the way it reacts. And that can be proven very simply. You know, there's lots of these going down the rabbit hole is a video series that's on YouTube, and it talks about how these photons acted differently than they did whenever they were observed and when they weren't observed. The results were different.
So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of 2 bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched.
I don't claim to understand that completely, but I do know that the observation of something causes a change in something. Now, let's bring that to a level where you and I can understand it, because unless you're some kind of astrophysicist, you're probably not going to be able to conceptualize what I'm saying unless you break it down kindergarten style, because that's what I had to do for myself. take kids on a school bus. They'll be rowdy. They'll be doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And then you put a camera up, a video camera, and what happens? Those kids calm down because they're being observed. Same situation whenever it comes to the real world on MTV. You put cameras all through the house. They like you to think that they forget about it so that they start just acting real, you know. No, they're very cognizant that they're being filmed all the time, and that modifies their behavior. Observation modifies our behavior. Take it to another level. If there's a $20 bill falls out of somebody's pocket in front of you, it's you and the guy in front of you, and he pulls his keys out and the $20 bill falls. Whether you give that back to him or simply pick it up and keep it for yourself is greatly influenced by whether there's somebody over to your right or to your left. If somebody's over to the side and they're looking in and they see you pick up that $20 bill, isn't that going to affect the way you react? Whether you like to admit it or not, it will. So observation changes things. Observation is a powerful thing. Anyway, getting back to the Mandela effect. So, I don't remember Mandela dying in prison. I remember him dying after he became president of, like I said, president of South Africa. I remember that whole thing went on, and I remember he lingered for a while, and then he finally passed. So that's why I remember. But there is evidently a significant group of people who believe that he died in the 80s. Now, okay, let's get into one other thing before we get into this cray-cray woman over here. She cray-cray. Is the idea of multi-dimensional worlds. I think it's possible. Quantum physicists will tell you that it's theoretically true. I'm a believer in God, so if it is true, God did it. So let's just get that out of the way. But I'm going to say this, that if there is multi-dimensional areas, then that's possible where we get the Mandela effect. It's also possible where we get deja vu, where we're doing something we could have sworn we'd already done it before, been there, smelled that. But if there are dimensions, with all of us, then the very next dimension beside of me, the next one over from me, it may be that me in that dimension is exactly like me. Get what I'm saying? It may be that the next guy over in the next dimension may be exactly like me. Then the guy over in the dimension right next to him may be exactly like me and him. But then the guy on the next one may be just a little bit different. It may be minuscule difference. It may be that my hair's a little longer or something to that effect. But the idea is that the further you get away from your dimension, the less alike you are to the one that you are currently in. So, the next dimension over may have Nelson Mandela dying in 1980s. And that might be where people's remembering that from. It could have all these things in it. So, that may be what they're remembering. So, it's a possibility. And then I say that the more that you get away from your dimension, the more things are changed. But the problem with that is the further you get away in the dimension-wise, the more dimensions that there are between you, that doesn't allow you to see that far down the road. Hope I'm not being very confusing. I'm just saying that if there is interdimensional abilities, maybe that's where the Mandela effect comes from. Maybe that's why we have gaps in memory. I know that my ex-wife, one time I said to her, why don't you, she cooked all the time. I said, why don't you cook some fish? And she said, I've cooked fish for you before. And it became a joke because I could have sworn up and down that she had never cooked fish for me. in like 2 or 3 years that we'd been married at that point. And she swore up and down I had. People confirmed it. Her children confirmed it. Even her friend Tanya said that at some point her and her kids and her husband were there while we were eating it. I had no memory of that whatsoever. So maybe it was a dimensional shift and I just got put in this dimension for some reason or other. I'm not the exact person that I was in the other one, except for the memory of the fish dinner. Maybe the fish dinner is the tipping point between me and him. Everything else, exactly the same. Hey, you're still a fat guy that lives in Tennessee, but you've had one less fish dinner. I guess. I don't know. So, alright, that leads me to this. This lady right here, and I may not go through the whole video, but she's talking about the Mandela effect. She's kind of cray-cray. I don't mean to say that in a disparaging way. I don't mean to be beyond. I don't mean to be mean about it or anything, but I mean she's obviously pretty upset. So I mean, God bless her. I don't wish anything bad on her, but listen to this.
I can't sleep. Forgive me. I took a shower. I was in bed. I didn't plan on anybody seeing me. I have no makeup on, and I don't care. The Mandela effect for me has been around since before I knew it was called the Mandela effect, and it started with the Lindbergh baby. In my reality, the Lindbergh baby was never found. And I remember watching something on the History Channel, and I thought, wow, that's really strange because maybe, you know, I'm wrong or...
Okay, so she remembers the difference in the Lindbergh baby. Remember, I remember the Lindbergh baby being abducted and never being found.
And then it was, you know, more and more things like Shirley Temple. I remember her being dead at a young age.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all. I remember Shirley Temple, you know, being a child star, and then she got married to somebody named Black, so it's Shirley Temple Black, and then she become some kind of ambassador or something.
And then, of course, Mandela. I actually remember Mandela dying in like 88 or 89.
Pretty sure this woman's from another dimension.
So I became aware that it was called the Mandela effect when I looked up the Berenstain Bears. And actually, it was because I found a book and I'm like, that's not right. And that's how I found the Mandela effect, probably 3 years ago. But this is beyond. It's hitting home because it's my husband. When I was growing up in school, Pangea was not the norm. It was a theory. Continental drift theory was a theory, but it was not taught in schools.
Okay, so if you don't know what Pangea is, if you look at a world map, and I'll put one right here, if you look at a world map and you kind of see how North America and South America, and if you squish Africa across, it kind of fits like a puzzle, so that there is a theory, the Pangea theory, that at one time it was all landmass and then it kind of expanded out and now there's water between all these masses, but that they kind of fit together like a puzzle pieces. And who knows, maybe that is the way it came out. But I do remember it being just a theory. I mean, I don't remember if I heard it in school or not, but she's pretty upset about it.
I graduated in 97. So in the 90s, it still was being talked about, but it definitely was not accepted. Now, my husband graduated in 91. So it definitely wasn't there for him and his generation. It was not taught in like the 90s and the 80s. It actually was accepted now, if you look it up, in 1960. So it's being taught in public school since 1960.
Now, I don't think it was taught whenever I was in school. I graduated in 84, so I'm quite a bit older than she is. And I'm just going to say, I don't remember it being part of the curriculum. I think maybe I heard it later in life.
You know, just like your husband or your wife, they tend to tell the same stories. Well, my husband vividly tells this story in my memory of him sitting in class and somebody who was maybe...
It's a pothead.
And he was maybe like a pot smoker, you know, It's whatever that age. So a pot smoker, and he wasn't the brightest, and he really didn't contribute much to the class. And he literally said, well, it looks like that one and that one fit together. The teacher said, no, she kind of made fun of him, and they all kind of made fun of him, and they laughed a little bit about it, and then, that was it, because we've talked about how Pangea now is accepted. And he tells this story, he's told it a million times. For anybody that has a husband and a wife that tells the same stories, those stories.
So maybe the curriculum was different in other places, and they did teach the Pangea theory. But anyway, she's pretty upset about it.
Tonight, for some reason, the story came up, and he doesn't remember that. In fact, he has always been taught. He's always been taught. Pangea always existed. And I go, no, honey, you told this story. You've told it to me several times. And he goes, no, I've been taught that my whole life. It was called continental drift, and he's serious. Well, what do I do with that memory? And where is my husband that used to tell me that story?
Well, it is a little creepy, I'm just saying. I don't know what she does with that memory. It's kind of sad, really. I feel for her because so she has a memory of her husband telling this little anecdote about being in high school, and the stoner guy looks at the world map and says, hey, they kind of fit together. And everybody kind of chuckling and going on and having a good time with that. And then the subject come up. Now, this is years later, they've obviously been married for a long time. He's told this story dozens of times, and she's right. We tell the same stories over and over again, especially men, because we're that way, and he don't remember it at all. So maybe he had a dimensional shift. I don't know. And I'm not really giving you any answers or anything like that for sure, but maybe I'm just giving you something to think about. So, if this kind of thing interests you, let me know in the comments. I'm going to put links up to all the videos that I used. Remember, this fair use disclaimer. I get to criticize, critique, and educate. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not making any money off this, no sponsors. There are certain things that I remember one way, and things turned out to be different. Like I said, maybe I've had a dimensional shift, and I'm less one fish dinner. So, I don't know. But anyway, all right, folks, thank you for watching. If you've not already done so, be sure and subscribe and like and share. Subscribe, like, and share. Can we all chant that together? Subscribe, like, and share. It really helps out. So, you know where I am? I'm right here. You're right there. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Kevin's Podcast Show. I always thought it was of the world.